Welcome to Two Peas on a Pod. My name is Peyton, and joining me as he always does, my brother Parker. How you doing today, man? It's draft week.
Dude, I know it's kind of snuck up on me. I don't know if it's because we haven't done a whole lot of draft talk this year like we usually do, or what it is, but I'm excited for it. And
That's
we're
probably why.
we just haven't talked about, and then we've talked more NBA last 2 weeks than anything, it feels like. So um, I'm ready to dive back into football. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, and what a better way to kick off draft week than to have us on video for the first time. So if you're watching on YouTube, thank you very much for tuning in. We appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. Shout out to the Box Store Network guys for letting us have this on YouTube. Parker, with that said, we can talk draft finally. I
Yeah,
feel like we have not talked about the draft. I am going to be sharing my screen with everybody, so bear with me. Hopefully, this doesn't make my computer explode. That would not be great. Okay,
that would not be
cool.
great.
We are, yeah, there we go.
Hopefully it doesn't make my computer explode.
Right. So, first we have all we have a power ranking, so to speak. This is just from a you can see the website. This is a site I like to use for overall like draft information. It has all the measurables. It just has a general ranking. Some that I don't agree with, some I do, but these are the big prospects, big names in this year's NFL draft, and we're gonna go through them. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna try and find the best fit within ranges that are realistic, of course, for each player, right? Like
Right.
we're going to talk about Cam Ward, but like we could talk about the best fit, but we know where he's going. Seems like we know
Yeah,
where he's going
exactly.
at this point, right?
hmm
And we'll go from there. We're just going to go through about, I think we have a list of about 13, 14 ish players, maybe 15, that we're going to talk through and just give our, some high level thoughts on and talk about more about the fits of where they really could end up like reaching the ceiling of their careers versus maybe like more realistically where they're going to end up and how that might impact them positively or negatively depending on if we think it's a bad fit. So, Parker, we can go ahead and talk about Cam Ward a little bit, right? Quarterback, Miami, and we're almost positive at this point. It's like a nine. I don't know what the odds are on various sportsbook, but I can almost imagine it's in like the minus like 3,000 range, right? Like
It's
I don't know.
he's a very heavy favorite to go
Yeah,
first.
yeah,
Um, when you say let's talk about Cam Ward a little bit, like I'm so down for just a little bit because it's Titans or bust essentially. I have the New York Giants written down on my sheet, but that's just because I really don't want to see a quarterback go to Cleveland in the first round. So I'm going to take Cam Ward to the Titans. It's not much to talk about. I mean, he's Cam Ward.
yeah. I mean,
He's
I
the
guess
one
we
one.
could talk about like him on the Titans. Do we think? I guess from a fit standpoint, right? Just from pure successive Cam Ward like reaching his full potential. Like, do like either of us think that Cam Ward is going to be the best version of himself in Tennessee? I think you and I would probably say no.
Yeah, no, I think Tennessee has a lot of problems as far as like O-line. Like it doesn't matter who you put there
Yeah,
at the
and I
moment
mean, there's not enough pass catchers at this point in time, right? It's Calvin Ridley, not a whole lot
or
else.
bust. Yeah, nothing else going on. And then their running back tandem's okay, and they can catch the ball out of the backfield. But again, there's no offensive line, so it's really tough.
Yeah. So with that said, and I mean, they did spend money in free agency a little bit to solidify offensive line. Like they brought in some guys, but relative to like what we saw last season, offensive line was terrible. So ideally, those free agent additions are going to help when Cam Ward gets there, but we will not know until we actually see it on the field. So I think that's probably enough Cam Ward talk. I like the player. I think that he has some of the like I don't want to say Mahomes to him. He's not Patrick Mahomes, but like he has some of that like escapability, like finding ways to just make plays whenever a play breaks down in a way that only I've seen Patrick Mahomes do. Where it's like,
hmm
the pocket's collapsing, somebody has an arm on him, and it's like, oh, the little shovel pass to, Noah Gray, who's sitting right there,
hmm
whenever it looks like it's a 6 yard sack and turns it into like a 10 yard gain, right?
Right.
Cam Ward is really good at that kind of stuff, where he just kind of makes plays out of thin air, so to speak. But he's not Patrick Mahomes by any means, as far as arm talent, that nothing like that. But I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback overall over time in the league. Probably the only one that I'm going to consider that for throughout the rest of this draft.
Right.
So Cam Ward, Titans. Enough talking about that. I think we could talk about the next quarterback, and this is where
Mhm.
it's going to get a little more, I guess you could say, varied on how we view this guy. It's Shador Sanders, if you haven't figured that out, because he's the next guy up. And I'm not the biggest fan of Shador Sanders. I think
Me
he's
either.
okay. I'm glad. I think he's fine, but for somebody who's being talked about as QB2 in this draft, right?
Right.
There's not a whole lot of like things that he does especially well, right? He
Right.
doesn't have the biggest arm. He's not fast. Like he's not slow, but he's not fast, right?
He's not insanely accurate. He's not. I mean, I get what you're saying. He's just he's the average guy.
He is very average. Like
Average guy.
that is the best way to describe him.
But like being QB2 in this draft class is not impressive whatsoever.
It's not at all. And
Being
that what
QB1 is not super impressive, but being QB1 and the 1-1 overall is usually like, okay, you got to be good to be the 1-1.
right. And I mean, here's the thing with Shador. Like yes, I think he's going to start in the NFL for at least his rookie contract. The problem is, does he start in the NFL after that? That's what you start to
If
get a
he
little
goes to
hairy.
Cleveland, no.
Okay, so let's talk about the fits, right? So it's seeming like right now, like Shador is not going top three. Like that was something that was like early on in the draft a possibility. That seems like that's way out the window, right?
Right.
So we get to the range where we start to think about it, right? I think the earliest that we people can start to kind of like discuss it is probably 9, right? With the Saints, because they have the Derek Carr situation with the shoulder, was it shoulder injury? I think now, whatever it
Yep.
is, that
hmm
he likely not going to play or could keep him out this season, which kind of came out of nowhere after they restructured his contract. Um, and then at that point, like he could go at 9, but then after New Orleans, like if New Orleans doesn't take him, I mean, maybe a team trades up to like 15 or 16 or 17 to get him, just to get ahead of Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh's the other team that's like they need a quarterback. That seems like a good spot for Shador to go with Mike Tomlin being, a being able to handle the like the I don't want to call it baggage that comes with Shador, but like obviously if you draft Shador, like you're taking on the Sanders machine, right? Like the Dion machine, all that kind of stuff. Um, Tomlin seems like one of the few people who kind of handle it, and
Okay.
it's like if not them, then it's like he could even go into like the like. Do you think there's a world where he doesn't go in the first round?
Yeah, no.
Okay, so we think he's going in the first round, whether it's
No,
like a
there's going to be a lot of teams, and like whether he likes it or not, there might be a team that drafts him where he's not going to start. Like I
right
think the Rams could draft
Rams.
Shador Sanders because
Yep.
he's going to sit behind Matthew Stafford, no doubt. I think that'll be a very valuable year for him. I think that'll actually be better for him than just going to a team like Pittsburgh and starting and having to figure it out with a team that's so average. They're always 8-8 and they play in one of the toughest divisions in football. I think I'd rather go to the Rams. The 49ers aren't that good right now. The Seahawks got a little better, but I think it's going to take a minute for them to figure it out. Like you're going to a much weaker division. You still have good pass catchers. You're in a big market. You're in LA. Dion's not going to have a problem with that. Shador's going to make a lot of endorsement money from that. Like I think that actually makes sense to go to LA at the latest
So
in the
then
draft.
let me just ask, like, because I think that would probably be my pick for the best fit for him.
hmm
Do you think that that's the case for you as well?
That I mean that's my second team on the list only because I really don't see the Saints like missing out on that
So you right, but
at
so you
9.
think the most realistic outcome is he goes 9 to the Saints?
9 to the Saints, 21 to the Steelers, or my favorite to the Rams. Because
Okay,
I do think if Pittsburgh or especially the Saints take him at 9, I think both those teams are like overpaying for what they're getting. I think the Rams are getting good value at 26. I mean, you're getting a guy that could possibly be a franchise quarterback that's going to get to sit behind Stafford for a year.
right. And
At
in
26, I think that's a good position to put yourself in with McVay.
on a team where like the rest, like everything else is fine. Like the offensive line's
Right.
decent. Pass catchers are there. Running back's good. Defense is good. So you're going into an organization. Whereas like with New Orleans, I mean like there's just so much that needs to be improved on the entire roster. Almost needs an overhaul at this point, which has been talked about a lot, not just by myself, but like even I've had discussions with Simon. If you listen to any football podcast, people have talked about like the Saints just need everything in this draft. They need to like draft
Right.
every position with every with any of the picks that they have, and drafting a quarterback at 9 would just almost be like the same old Saints just trying to remain competitive, but not ever getting more than just your average competitive team um, that they have been, right? So,
Well, what's dangerous about the Saints in this draft is that their division's not good. Their division hasn't been good. So when they get a draft pick, they're like, "Oh, maybe this one player will put us over that hump. Maybe this one player will put us over that hump." And it's like they all end up being average guys, essentially.
right,
Or some of them are really good, and then like the rest of your team's just falling apart. Someone's
right.
injured. You have quarterback trouble. Alvin Kamara's out half the season, something like that. It hurts. But
It's funny that like if you're a Saints fan, you almost want like a Falcons or a Tampa Bay to just come out and be awesome for like 3 years so that the Saints can stop convincing themselves that they
so
can
you
win
can
the division.
rebuild.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
So
because they,
no,
I mean, when was the last time they did win the division?
not it wasn't that like long ago that happened. I believe they won.
It's got to
Oh,
be Breeze
actually, I
era,
think
though,
you're.
doesn't it? Like the last year Breeze did it.
I think you're right because I think the rest of the years they have like missed it by like a game or half a game at the end of the season. I think that's what's happened,
2020, last time they won the division.
and that was
So
Breeze's
it's
last
they're on a
season.
5 year drought.
Yeah.
Yep,
So
they're on a 5 year drought.
but I bet you if you looked at the standings, they're probably like 2 games away from being the division winners. So it's like even up until the end of the season, they're like in the race until they're not, right? So
Right.
Um, I think that that's probably enough Shador talk as far as like we think the best fit is the Rams. I would argue that the worst fit is the Niners, not the Niners. I'm sorry, the Saints, and it seems like you might agree.
Yeah, I agree on that. And the thing is that one last thing I want to like label as Shador Sanders, like the number one thing that's on my list is that he's like my biggest question mark in this draft.
As in just player that you're not sure is going to pan out, or just like you are the biggest unknown.
But he's the player that I've struggled putting a value on of where to
Okay,
draft him. Because between him and QB or between Cam Ward and QB3, it's a massive gap
right,
of where those guys get drafted. We're usually like not usually, but like last year, we had 5 quarterbacks and 15 picks or something like that. Like
right, right.
so this year it's really hard to find where Shador really where you get your value at. So that's what I mean by biggest question mark, I guess, so to speak.
I get that, and we can go ahead and use that as our transition to talk about the guy who, if I can find him in this draft ranking site, the guy who is likely QB3 on a lot of people's boards and is being talked about as QB3, and that's Jackson Dart. We won't keep this, or we'll try to keep this brief. Jackson Dart, very highly touted recruit who started out at USC, transfers to Ole Miss, has been there for a minute. Played well, led Ole Miss to a lot of wins over the course of his time there. Coming into this year, he had a lot of hype as like maybe this guy could be the guy that like jumps out and becomes like a top 10 pick, right?
Right.
And kind of, I mean, he has a good season from a sense of like the highs, but there were just some low lows of like breaking down under pressure in in high intensity moments. A lot of people remember the Florida game where he like threw like 3 picks within like a 6 minute time span. Um, but of all other than like Cam, like this is probably the quarterback that makes the most consistent like NFL quality throws amongst all the other quarterbacks, right? And
Right.
just has the arm talent to do it. A lot of people do criticize the Ole Miss system for just being kind of a system that generates a lot of this passing production, but never really the players, specifically like the Lane Kiffin stuff, right? Which
Right.
does kind of scare a lot of people. But I think Dart does have. I would argue like I don't love. I'm starting to get to a point where like I almost would rather, even if I have Shador ranked above Dart, which I do, I would almost rather just draft Dart because the ceiling on Dart is going to be immensely better than what Shador's is.
So let me ask you something. Where exactly is like your range for him to get drafted?
That's the thing. So I think that at earliest, like Cleveland, let's just say, right? I think a team like Cleveland may convince themselves to make an attempt to trade up into like the very end of this first round, right? Like right
Right.
around, 29, 30, 31, 32, somewhere in there, right?
hmm Do you
I
really
think
think
they
any
could.
four of those teams are taking a quarterback?
No, no.
So why would they trade up?
No, no, no. What I'm saying is like sometimes you don't trade up because of
The
like
player,
you're
or that
worried
you're
about the
scared
teams.
they're
You're
gonna
worried about
you get
somebody
some
else
value.
trading up. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
And
Okay. All right.
that's really all it is. It's not because you're worried about like those four teams straight. Because I know the Browns have the first pick in the second round, right? They have pick
Right.
33. They could just
Right.
stick and pick Dart there if they wanted to. That's probably where the conversation starts. I don't know that Dart makes it into the first round. Maybe if this, like, let's just say theoretically, like maybe somebody jumps the Steelers for Shador. Maybe the Steelers talk themselves into Dart just because they need a quarterback, but ultimately, I think that the conversation starts with the Browns at 33. And then, I mean, like, the thing is, the Giants at 34, um, you could argue, like, the Raiders at 37
So
could take
that's
him.
my spot right there. I have the Raiders at 37. If he doesn't go at 37, and like I guess you're right, he could go 33, 34. But like I really like him in Miami at 48. Like I realistically think that could be where he gets drafted to.
That I have not even, I hadn't even thought about that, but Alexa, turn on the office lamp.
Alexa, you're
um,
killing the vibe. All right.
but with you saying Miami, that is a really interesting thought. And I know that you are just not a Tua guy. Like in any world. Like I feel like you've been trying to
I
replace
mean,
Tua for like a year.
but how many people are a Tua guy at this point?
I guess it depends on like if you think that you're going to do better than league average at quarterback, which it does seem like Tua is getting to a point where he's just Kirk Cousins,
Well, I
like
think
for
Jackson
show.
Dart's a player that could really benefit on sitting the bench a year.
Agreed.
I don't think that he needs to go to Cleveland and start day one. Like I don't think that's what needs to happen. I think that just flushes his career down the toilet, like 90% of the other quarterbacks that went to Cleveland in the first round.
So maybe you're saying like because Tua, I believe his extension is already like kicked in, I think.
hmm
So you're saying to start the next like year and a half, and if it's just not working, trade to start Dart, start over completely. The team,
Correct.
like rebuild the team, so to speak.
Correct.
Okay, okay. Like I don't hate the idea. I'm not like get out of my face. That will never happen. That's actually something that if you paint that picture, it could happen. Um, maybe like in a similar vein, but probably like more realistic considering that the contract isn't long. Like maybe the Jets at 42 could be an option considering they signed Fields, but it's like a 2 year deal. They can see if it works out. If it doesn't, they have a backup plan. Um,
Right.
Dart is an interesting one. Like the Saints at 40, just theoretically, let's just say they don't draft a quarterback at 9, right?
Right.
That's
hmm
another option. Um, I think the best fit. I think the best fit that we've named. I think Vegas because I
Vegas
do
makes the most sense. They're number one on my list.
yeah I do think that the infrastructure there would be the best to kind of hone in on what Dart's best qualities are, which is just like he has the arm talent, he has the accuracy, he has the IQ there. It's just about like honing in the consistency that he had consistency I can't say that word apparently that he has as a decision maker that
I
like
mean,
prevent the turnovers and all that stuff and like a guy like Gino is honestly a good guy to do that because Gino takes care of the ball like doesn't turn the ball over a ton like probably has about the same talent as a Jackson Dart does like from an arm strength yada all that kind of stuff and I would say that with the new infrastructure in place, like the Pete Carroll, even like the Tom Brady aspect of it, like having that around a Jackson Dart, I think, is a good environment. It really for any QB, that's like a great environment to be surrounded by.
I could even see them if, let's say, it gets down to pick 50, 52, 53.
Hmm.
Like I could even see Vegas trading up from their third round pick, that 3-4
Yeah, yeah.
there. And I could even see them trading up to get them in like maybe at like 60 to 58
Like
range.
if just nobody's biting on him at
I
all.
mean,
Yeah,
you're looking like Houston, Baltimore, Detroit, probably aren't taking a quarterback there.
yeah,
So maybe just talk one of those guys into trading down or something. So he's very he could go just about anywhere between, like you said, like the first pick of the second round to, I think like up to the 10th pick in the third. Like he could really land anywhere in there.
yeah. That
So, all
he
right.
he probably has like just given that he's kind of a wild card in this quarterback class. Like he kind of has the biggest range of any of the guys we talked about.
Mhm.
Um, I think we can move on to just the general overall players, and we can talk about a guy who a lot of people think is the best player in this class, and I can't really disagree with them. And this Travis Hunter. And I'm still navigating to the page, but that's where we're going. Uh, Wide receiver corner from Colorado. I don't know that much needs to be said about who he is. It seems like he's going to Cleveland. It's what it looks like, right?
Right.
Betting odds would suggest that. I think we could talk about that fit because it seems like the closer we get to the draft, the more likely that's going to happen. I here's the thing: if he's really gonna play on both sides of the ball, right?
Right.
I would hate to say this, but I almost feel like, and I'm not saying it's because of specifically it's the Browns. Like it's not just, oh, it's the Browns, he's gonna suck. It's not that. But because he's probably gonna like the tread on the tires is gonna wear really thin, really fast if he's playing on both sides of the ball. Do we both agree with that?
Yes, but I will say I've heard that he's like he's going to be like primary offense on like like on a few of the teams that are looking to draft him that have been spoken to, they're going to put him primary offense, secondary defense, which means like he'll probably be on a few packages on the defense, whether it's like the slot corner or something like that.
Yeah. Sorry for the Vagisil ad on the left side.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
but
Well, keep your
nothing
pH
like
balance up.
nothing like Vagisil and Bailey's
Yeah, nothing
on a
like
Monday night.
yeah. Chocolate Bailey's is out shop now. We got the Talladega on Sunday. Everybody watch out.
But I going back to what you're saying, like even if he does play um corner temporarily, right? Like as his secondary position, right?
Right.
He's going to be playing more snaps than probably from what we understand, he's going to be playing more snaps than any other player, right?
Right. Well, let's do this exercise real quick. Since we're talking, and Travis Hunter's a really big deal.
Yeah.
Where tell me your two favorite fits for him, like where he's realistically going to get drafted. Tell me your two favorites.
I really like him in New England. That's not going to happen because he's not going
Right.
to get there. But
Hmm.
like if he got to 4, like that is the best spot for him
Okay. And
of
now
all these places.
what's your second favorite?
I guess I would say like just by default because he's going to go pick 2 through 4. Like I'm not going to pick somewhere that he's not going to go. I would
Right.
say the Giants are the second one.
Okay. So if he goes to New York, he's not wide. He doesn't have to be wide receiver one, which means he doesn't have to play all offensive
Right.
snaps. Where if he goes to Cleveland, he's not wide receiver one, but he's really close. I mean, Jerry Judy's probably wide receiver one there right now, right?
Just by default, but like if you were just telling me who's the better wide receiver,
It's like 50-50, I think, just because
it's a
Jerry
toss
Judy
up.
has a decent name so far. Like he had a good year last year,
Judy
we'll say.
finished the year strong. Like he looked
Yeah,
like the guy closer to the guy we saw coming out of college. I
right,
will say that.
exactly. So, but and the exercise really is like how many offensive snaps does he really have to play if he goes to the Giants?
Right.
Right,
Right.
you have Malik Neighbors, you have Russell Wilson, you have a good running back, Tyrone Tracy. Like you have something going on there where Travis Hunter doesn't have to be like this ultimate presence on the offense. Where if he goes to Cleveland, he has to be this ultimate presence. So that's where the snap count gets tricky. Really, it depends for me on which team drafts him.
Right.
And
I
if he
just
goes to New
remember
England, oh, go
like
ahead.
I just remember this is like a really weird callback, but like do you remember Jabril Peppers?
Hmm.
Cleveland drafted him in the first round of like whatever draft that was. It was like 2013, 2014, whatever year it was. And weird, like people might not remember how good Jabril Peppers was in college, but he was like a legitimate
Michigan?
yes, Heisman,
Yeah,
like was actually a Heisman candidate, like was at the ceremony and everything, right?
right,
Played on both sides of the ball. That was like the whole thing about him was he can play both wide receiver slash like running back slash whatever, and he was a safety, right?
right.
And he got to, I mean, he kind of stuck. I believe he's still in the NFL. Like he stuck around, but he was never
He plays
like,
for the Patriots.
yeah. So he's still in the league, but like he's never been like that good of a player on either side of the ball, right?
Right.
And I'm not saying that's going to happen with Travis Hunter, but like because if Travis Hunter is going to try and do what he did in college, because it seems like he's going to, like he keeps saying that he is. It's like that's just what he seems. He's like, I'm not going to go to a team that's not going to let me. Like he just doesn't want to do that. And so if that's the case, like I would worry about him. Like Cleveland is the worst fit of the teams that he could go to, which is why if he goes there, like I really fear that he's going to burn out of the league really quickly.
Call me crazy. Call me crazy. He's gonna Tim Tebow himself if he's not careful.
No, I don't disagree with like I don't disagree
Because
with
Tim
what you're
Tebow
saying.
came in the league saying like, "Oh, I'm not going anywhere if they're not going to put me at quarterback. Like, I'm not playing any
Yes,
other position
correct.
if I'm not playing
Right.
quarterback." And everyone was like, "Dude, Tebow, you make a hell of a fullback or hell of a tight
Tight
end.
end. Right.
Like, you be the man for that." And he was like, "Nope, I'm not." So like looking at Travis Hunter now being one of the top prospects, one of the best college players, this, that, and the other, going, no, I'm not playing for a team that's not going to play me on both sides of the ball. It's like, okay, well, Tim Tebow lasted 5 seasons.
Right.
So,
Right. I just
uh,
worry if it's like Travis Hunter just doesn't last from a health standpoint. Not even like
well, right. Well, yeah, exactly. But that was like the closest comparison I could think of to where
from the
this has happened
narrative, yeah,
before.
from the narrative
Hmm.
coming into the league and how it panned out. I don't I think that's a good callback, you know. Tim Tebow could have been Taysom Hill. But you
He'd
could have
still,
been you were right there.
yeah.
but
I mean, he could have been a great tight end. But anyways,
okay, so like we both kind of are in agreement that like Cleveland would actually be a bad fit, but that's probably where he's going to go.
I don't really think there's a win for Cleveland here, except for well, can we go ahead and just since we've talked about the top two guys, or can we talk about Abdul Carter
Yeah,
and
yeah,
just go into
I
that?
was actually going to
Okay.
go into Abdul Carter because he's like the next best player in the NFL draft, and I think that he is not going to make it outside of the top four, just like
Well,
Travis
I
Hunter
think
isn't. Whoa,
he's like the only fit. Like that's where I was transitioning to. He's like the only fit for me for Cleveland
agreed.
because I could see Cleveland saying like, okay, well, if we're gonna do one thing, we're gonna rush the crap out of the quarterback.
Yep,
Like we're gonna at least have one of the best edge rushers in the like if we're gonna be good at something, let's be really good at it. But other than that, I really hate Cleveland taking and anybody else landing in Cleveland that's in that 1 to 4 range.
agreed. And I'm not saying that he would, but like if for some reason Mason Graham went above Abdul Carter, like even that is like okay, fine,
Yeah.
sure.
Okay.
Like I don't
Right.
love it because I think Abdul Carter is a better player, but like it at least fits better, right?
Hmm.
But I do agree. Cleveland, Abdul Carter, like honestly, I think it's like I think it's the best fit, weirdly, of
Well,
like
that's what I'm
the
saying.
four
It's the
teams.
best, right? Of the 4 teams that he could go to, it is the best fit.
Yeah. But I it does seem like he's because right now Hunter's favored to go to, it does seem like Carter is likely going to be a New York Giant or a New England Patriot, depending on, which way they decide to go. But um great player, does have the injury. I don't know that we want to talk. I know we spent a lot of time on Hunter and Abdul Carter, really great player, probably just a below like Hunter's just as far as talent goes. But I mean, as far as thoughts on like best fit and stuff, because there's such a limited amount of teams they can go to, and it's like at a point in time where we don't really see them going anywhere else. There's not really a whole lot else to talk about with that. So the next
Hmm.
player, let's go ahead and talk about Ashton Jinty.
Okay.
Uh, I don't want to say generational because I feel like that gets overused, but like really, really, really good running back prospect, right? Probably the best
Right.
since Bijan, right? Which I know that
Right.
was only 2 years ago, but last year's running back class sucked. And like, I think most people would probably say that Ginty, as my page is loading, is probably more in the range of like kind of where we saw Jameer Gibbs in that draft,
Hmm.
or maybe like somewhere in between Bijan and Gibbs as a prospect, right?
Right.
Um, and I'm not saying that the type of player, but just where we see them as far as the caliber of the. Even though this is not loading, I'm just going to go to the draft order.
I don't think we've had a good running back class since like 2020, really. Like
You mean
Jonathan
from like
Jonathan
top to
Taylor,
bottom?
top to bottom, where it's like, yeah, it's a good class. So this is really exciting, I think, for the league. Ashton Jeanty leads the way in the running back class, but I think that's one of the most exciting parts about this draft for
Yeah,
me.
and talking about where the range has grown even since like we came up with the idea to do this show like this way,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
Even today, there was something that I think it was Simon sent it to me or Austin sent it that there's now some kind of smoke about Ginty even going as high as 5 to Jacksonville.
Wow.
Yeah. Same reaction, and not because I think that it's unwarranted. Because I do think that if you're just picking like the best overall players, like Ginty is one of the 5 best players in the draft.
Yeah, right. But I don't think Jacksonville's like needs that necessarily
Well,
versus what they could go out there and get. Right. But
right. I mean, like, I don't think that. I mean, I know that as far as running the ball, like, I know that, they bring in Liam Cohen, who was on the Rams, was on the Buccaneers. Both teams love to run the ball and, like, focus a lot of what they do running the ball. And Travis Etienne, as much as he was highly touted, like, somehow has just become not unplayable, but, like, he was, like, legitimately kind of, like, benched or, like, moved to second string towards the end of last year.
I think Bigsby was taking a lot of carries.
Yeah, and that was just alarming to a lot of people, including myself. Um, so I think that before it was like, oh, Vegas is the ceiling at 6, which that makes sense. Pete Carroll, always has had that like bell cow running back in his offense in Seattle, and the Vegas running back room is like just a bunch of
Terrible.
nobodies.
It's
So
Raheem Mostert and Alexander Madison, I think, still, and Zamir White.
Madison is not there, but Zamir White, Mostert they did sign, but he's old, can't stay healthy. I think
Yeah,
it's like
right.
Sincere McCormick.
Is that your favorite? Is that your favorite fit of the
I would
teams they
say
give it to?
no. It's not my favorite fit because my favorite fit is Chicago at 10.
Me too. Me too.
As much as
So
I hate to say it,
I
like
think realist. I only have three teams: Raiders, Bears, Niners. That are like I like the fit.
Niners is one that like I don't know if they do it just because like of the McCaffrey money, but man, does that fit makes so much sense.
Like McCaffrey's on his way out. They need something. They're about to pay Brock. Uh, they need some kind of firepower to their offense. They've lost so much, especially like they've even lost the run game that Debo kind of brought to the table.
Right.
Um, and McCaffrey's got Achilles tendonitis. Like
Might never
just
play again.
right, exactly. I just think that makes the most sense. They need to do something. But no, I think Chicago's my favorite fit. I think Las Vegas is the most realistic fit as far as where I think he'll go in the draft.
I think I agree with that. Like, because I don't think that the realistics is probably, which is crazy to say because I think that a lot of people were like, oh, he'll go, between Dallas and he'll go from Dallas to like, I'm trying to think of a team that might need a running back. Like maybe he'll go to Denver, right? Like
Cincinnati.
no, Denver was a really popular spot for Ginty for a while. And then, like, as we've gotten close to
Mhm.
the draft, he's moved all the way up into the top 10. And it's like he's not falling out of the top 10, which is something that I didn't expect
Correct.
to.
No, I don't think he is either.
So, with that said, we can move into the next player on our board, which we could stick at running back, go Armarion Hampton, uh, running back out of UNC, guy who played on a really bad team this year, but like still produced. And it was very clear that he was like the best player on the team. So,
Right.
um, and this is more like I don't want to, I know that you probably didn't watch a lot of UNC this year, so I don't blame you because they sucked. But given that a lot of people have compared this guy to having the same running style as like a Nick Chubb, that's the kind of running back that we're dealing with here. Whenever we look at the best fits, right, it seemed like we're getting to a point where he is going in the first round, probably in the latter half, but like it seemed like Hampton in the first round is all but a lock at this point. Um, Question is where. So a lot of people have said like Denver is a really
Hmm.
popular landing spot for him because Ginty is going to be gone more than likely at that spot. Denver needs a running
That's my
back.
number one.
It's
Hmm.
my number one too. Um, and I mean, like the other teams that make sense, like Washington is one that if he's there, Washington seems like that's a home run pick based on what they have currently. Like I know they have Brian Robinson, but Omarion Hampton is a different kind of running back than Brian Robinson. Like Brian Robinson does not have any kind of speed, and Hampton has a lot of it at his size.
Hmm.
So they don't have Eckler anymore, so that very clearly upgrades that Washington run game. Um, I would
I like him
argue,
in Minnesota.
yeah, I would say even with Aaron Jones getting an extension, even having Jordan Mason, like if they really did want to go Hampton, I wouldn't blame them because you could just run a rotation of running backs, but having Jones more as like as a secondary like third down specialist kind of
Well, I
running
think you
back.
get more out of Jones if he doesn't have to be on the field so much. I think you actually get your money's worth on his full extension because if you don't, let's say you don't go running, and I'm not saying you guys have to go running back at 24. Like I do think Minnesota's going to take a running back in the third, possibly if they don't.
Probably they'll pick one.
Like, right, exactly. But if they decide to spend it here, it's like, okay, Aaron Jones, you might have an extra 6 games with him where he's not going to be injured or beat up or this or that or just slow because he's been, you know, he's on 4 away games in a row and he's just getting too old for that. So, I don't know. I just feel like that's one of my favorite fits too if he doesn't go to Denver.
Yeah. So we agree Denver is our favorite fit, and I'll mention my least favorite fit. Like I would not be that thrilled if he went to Pittsburgh. Like Pittsburgh does, like I know they have Jalen Warren, I know they have Kenneth Gainwell, but neither of those guys are the kind of running back that Omarion Hampton is. And if they go running back on the first round, I would just not be thrilled with that because he's just going to be not saying he's going to be Najee Harris. They're a different type of players, but like he's just going to be Najee Harris in the way that like he's going to get a lot of carries. He's going to run for like 1,100 yards,
Hmm.
9 touchdowns. Not really going to matter in the grand scheme of things.
Just kind of gets the job done,
Like
sort
good
of.
for like decent running back for fantasy doesn't
Other than
matter in
that,
the NFL landscape.
right. Okay.
so I would also like him to go to Denver. I think him with Sean Payton in a offense that I think not only an offense but a team that's like very quickly becoming one of the better rosters in the NFL. Like I think that's really exciting from an NFL standpoint, considering the Broncos have been mid for what ever since Peyton Manning's left.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much.
So, and I think that was that the last running back I had on our list before we move on to the wide receivers.
Yeah, that was it. Those were the only
Okay,
two that we
that's what I
even.
thought. There are, I will say, not going to get into it. You can go to the other shows that are going to be on the Boxer Network, but there are a lot of running backs in this class that are interesting, that are going to be starters at some point in the league, probably going to be fantasy relevant guys. So I would, if you haven't already, like get to know these running backs because you're going to be hearing their names a lot. so,
Yeah.
um, as far as like general players, though, we can go into wide receiver. We'll start with Ted McMillan, right?
Okay.
He's a guy that I know that we've talked about in the past. There was that video that leaked about like he doesn't like to watch film that was like 3 years ago, and people don't think he's got it because he doesn't have a dog in him as a result of that. And like I will say, he doesn't play that aggressive. Like when you watch him, he doesn't like for extra yards, and there could be a little bit more intensity to him. But like overall, I am a big fan of what he's able to do at wide receiver. Now, as far as the range that he could go in the draft, right?
Hmm.
I think you start have the conversation even as early as 4. I don't know that he would go that high because it seems like he's falling, quote unquote, falling down boards, right? But New
Right.
England needs a wide receiver, and New England's kind of in the position where if it goes Ward, Hunter, Carter, like everybody thinks, they can kind of just pick whoever they want, and it's not going to matter, right? Like just whatever
Yeah.
player makes the most sense, whether it's
Hmm.
like Mason Graham, Membu, Ted McMillan, you name it. There's multiple players, but that's probably the highest he'll go. I don't know that he gets past like I would be shocked if he gets to like Arizona at 16.
There's no way.
Yeah,
He's gonna go to either the Patriots, the Panthers, or the Raiders. Like whoever. If the Raiders don't take Ashton Jeanty, they're gonna take a pass catcher for Geno outside of Brock Bowers. They don't, if he doesn't go there, he's gonna go to Carolina because if Carolina is gonna put a plan behind Bryce Young, Leggett can't be your wide receiver one.
agreed.
Like if you're gonna really say, "Hey, Bryce Young, we're gonna give you a shot," like you can't give him those receivers. So I don't think there's any world where he drops to Arizona. And if he's on the board at 12, Dallas is taking him over any other receiver,
Yeah.
I think, at that point. So yeah, I don't think there's any world where he gets down into the
Yeah, I think
16s.
you're right. I think his floor is Dallas. I think Dallas would pick him if he's there.
Yeah, and that's yeah, I don't think he'll be there though. I really don't. I think he'll
I
be a
would
top
hope he's
10.
not because he's a top 10 player. Like I would be disappointed if he fell that low. I guess if you're picking best fit, right? Like let's just
Hmm.
say between the Patriots, the Raiders, I'll even throw the Jets in there, considering that they don't really have another pass catcher outside of Garrett Wilson, and then the Panthers, right? Like which of those four do you think is the best fit?
Probably the Panthers.
I think I'd probably agree. If not them, then probably the Patriots, just because like you give Drake May number one option,
Right.
you know, immediately upgrade the offense and give him an opportunity to.
Four just might be a little rich. That's the only reason why I'm like the Patriots need that so bad, but it's just a little rich possibly for this player specifically.
Sure. But with what you said about like proving that Bryce Young is worth it, I think that that's also a really good fit just from what he would be able to do for the team and the franchise's plan moving forward.
From
Right.
day one, really. Like
Yeah.
he could just jump right in and just get to work. So
Yeah.
we have a couple more receivers too that we're going to
Yes,
talk about. Some of them
we
for me
do.
have some of the same landing spots, not exactly, but I could see a couple of these guys go into a couple of the same spots just depending on what order they go.
Yeah, the next guy we're going to talk about is Matthew Golden, who has been a darling of like the draft process as a whole.
Hmm.
He has quickly become like a first round lock for a lot of people, or not even a lock, but like a popular first round wide receiver for a lot of people. He ran what was it, like a 4.29 40, so it was like really fast on the track, but like whenever you watch him play, doesn't look that fast. I can promise you that.
Hmm.
Um, good player. I don't want to like crap on him too much. I'm just not a big fan of like I'm not a fan of him as like locked and loaded first round wide receiver. You know, gonna be my wide receiver one.
I
That's
mean, no,
or even
I hope
like
he's a Dallas Cowboy.
he would be great for Dallas. That is
He
like
has to he
one
has to go to a team that has like a solidified one. Like he has to go.
absolutely
Like I don't even think he could go to San Fran and play with Ayuk.
correct. I think
I
it has to be he is very much like the I'm trying to think of like target share wise. Like he is gonna be the 6 targets a game, but like catches like
very
that. That's
important.
the kind of target share that where it might not be heavy, but like the targets he's getting are high value targets.
I mean, I remember when Terrence and that's dude, I'm not opening the jar, but like
Terrence Williams.
Terrence Williams was one of those guys that just caught the ball like, you know, 5, 6 times a game, had about 70 yards and put the Cowboys in a lot of good positions and a lot of times. So I think that's where I like him the most is in Dallas. I also have him going like if he does slip a little bit because he has like, you know, he's not guaranteed to go top 20, you know.
No, I mean
So
he's not for everybody. Like he didn't have a ton of production in college, which is like the thing that weirds me out is like he was okay at Texas. Like he had a decent year, but like he was never like you look at him versus like Ted McMillan and you look at the stat like just like how important they were to the offense and you're like was Golden like the third receiver on the team? Like that's
no, Texas was also one of the better like running offenses
right. So
in
that
football.
might have something
So
to do with it as well. But okay, as far as team fits though, like Dallas, of course, like if they, I don't know that I like taking him at 12, but like I mean I if which he's not going to get to 44. Like I
no,
value him as like a second round wide receiver, but because of this draft class, I think he's going to go in the first round because wide receiver's not that deep. Um,
where do you have like another like one or two teams that you just like love them at? or like really like the fit.
I think that in I think Arizona could be a fit because they
Okay.
don't really have like a short area quickness kind of wide receiver.
Hmm.
And I know that they just drafted Marv in the first round, but it's Marv and Michael Wilson and like Greg Dortch and
That's
like
it.
I just think you can upgrade there. I would also say Houston could be an option if he makes it that late.
I liked him. Let's see. I have him at, I see, 20 and 22 actually. Two teams you haven't mentioned. Denver and the
The
Chargers.
Chargers are another one that I think he could definitely go to and immediately improve that wide receiver room.
Hmm.
The
So,
problem, but the problem is like I think that he has one of the weirdest like draft ranges. Like he could go at 12 probably. It's
hmm
probably the earliest I see him going.
I don't like him any higher than 12.
No, neither do I. But like
And he's not going at 12 if Tet's at 12. So,
right, but would it shock me if Golden were still there at like pick 35? Probably not. Like
no.
so I don't know. He's a strange player to me.
All right.
He's not my favorite wide receiver in this class. Like I have a couple other guys ranked ahead of him. Um, which we'll talk
Okay.
about two. Well, I think two of them. Yeah, two of them. We'll
Yeah.
talk about
All right.
Emeka Ibuka, right?
Hmm.
Basically, the safest pick in this draft amongst everybody. Been at Ohio State for God knows how long. Like, I don't know if you remember this, but like, whenever last year, like last season, whenever it was like he's not coming in the draft,
Yeah,
I
I
feel
remember
like
that being a
everybody was
thing.
I was shocked by it. I
Hmm.
was like, dude, he's not gonna declare
Yeah, I thought everyone thought it was really strange.
because it was like he's gonna be a first round pick if he declares.
Right.
Like,
Like this dude's gonna be a millionaire if he just like says, "Hey, I'm gonna play in the NFL." If he
right.
just raises his hand and he didn't, which is like not the worst thing in the world because I do think that maybe he gets drafted a little higher in the first this year.
I think compared to last year, yeah, you might be right. Because I mean,
So
he kind of fell in he kind of
go
fell
ahead.
into that like bucket of like Lad McConkey, right?
Yeah,
Like where
right,
he's that
right.
in that tier. And
Hmm.
so
So where are your teams that you like him going to, or where realistically do you see him going
I think my
specifically?
favorite fit is not. I know I just said Lad's name, but like put him with Lad McConkey and Justin Herbert, and that offense is going to be awesome.
See, I like him. I like him, and honestly, this is just like a teammate perspective thing. Like, does Seattle just beef up wide receiver room and just go ahead and get their third guy, or does Houston take a shot at him, knowing that they need another wide receiver if he slips that far?
Houston's the one that I think a lot of people peg because of the CJ Stroud connection. Like Stroud was his quarterback at one
Now,
point at Ohio State. So
in my opinion, I wouldn't really be that upset if like Dallas takes them either at 12. Like, I don't. I think between him and Golden, you're getting a. Or I'm sorry, yeah, Golden, you're getting about the same. Not necessarily the same thing, but the same ceiling.
definitely different players, but I get what you're saying. Like as far as like general improvement of the offense, it's probably going to have the same result.
Right, just in
Right.
different ways. But
Yeah.
yeah, I also like him in Seattle, and then yeah, like I said, Houston. So
Okay. And then I think the last guy I was going to talk about, just because I actually like this guy a lot, is Luther Burden the third. I don't know how much you know about this guy. If you know
yeah,
Zilch,
from Missouri,
yeah.
I've watched a lot of his highlights.
Okay. So
But
like, if you watch his highlights, you would think that he's like up there with Ted.
yeah, yeah, you would think he's like a lot better than. And but I've also like looked at where he mocks at a lot. Like I've been reading a
Yeah.
lot of mock drafts these last couple days, and one of my favorite places I see him is like if I like him at the Saints.
Oh, in the like
Uh,
second round.
Yeah, like or like he's another guy that I like at the Texans in the
Mhm.
late first if he's going to go in the first round.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he's like a solidified first round guy.
Yeah. Like one place where I think we had him at this place in the last, not this one that came out that we, shouted out on the show, the mock draft, but one of the few
Is it
mock drafts that we
Buffalo?
did. Washington was
Washington?
actually
Oh,
was
okay.
actually one because I mean, like, yeah, they just traded for Debo, right?
Hmm.
He's never healthy.
And they're old. Their wide receiver room's a little old now because they do have Terry. Debo and
Yeah,
Terry were drafted in 17 and 18. So
yeah, And Terry like sneakily got really old really quick. He's like gonna be 30 years old this year. So
Yeah, he was drafted in seven. He's, I mean, same age as Mahomes.
yeah. So I
Well,
think
actually,
that
probably a year older.
they're a sneaky, like even for some of these other wide receivers we've been mentioning, I think they're a sneaky wide receiver team, and like burden to them and pairing him with Jaden would just be, I think that would be awesome for what they like to do offensively. Other fits, I mean, like if he goes to the second round, like just Tennessee, just take him, and you've got Cam Ward and Luther Burden and Calvin
Hmm.
Ridley, and I think that's a great wide receiver pairing for a young quarterback.
Right.
Um, but that's really I like him a lot. I think he could truly be like whenever we it's all said and done. I this is my way of just trying to usher in my Luther Burden take of like I think he's going to be the second best wide receiver in this class. That is it for wide receiver though. As far as our combo goes, we could go through some of the other defensive players. Mason Graham is a guy that's very highly ranked, the highest ranked defensive tackle at this point in the process. I don't think that anybody would really disagree with that. The conversation starts at 4 with the Patriots, and I don't know if he gets any lower than like 9 to the Saints. Like if he gets to 9, I'd be shocked.
Yeah, me as well. I think I'm right there with you. I
And I mean,
go
like,
ahead.
who do you think is the best fit that you had down?
Jacksonville.
I also agree Jacksonville because they could not stop a nosebleed.
Yeah, dude, I know they just need something in the center of that defense that just has some sort of like, I
Yeah.
don't backbone to it, I guess.
Yep.
So I think that's just like my favorite fit. The only other play, like this would be such a weird pick because there's a couple other players I can see going here, but the New York Jets, like they don't need this whatsoever, but could they just say do the same thing the Browns do and say, hey, if we're going to be good at one thing, it's going to be like stopping the run up the middle?
Yeah. Him and
Like
Quentin
him
Williams.
and Quentin
Yeah.
Williams. Like,
Yeah.
could they do the same thing the Browns do and go, hey, if we're going to be good at something, let's just be really good at that.
It's
You
not a
know,
terrible idea.
it's just weird, like how I feel that way. Same as I feel about the Browns taking Abdul Carter. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, if we're going to be good at something, let's just be really good at it. So, yeah, but Jacksonville's my favorite fit for him for sure.
Yeah.
It's not even close.
Yeah. Okay. We both agree on that. So the last defender, I think, yeah, last defender we have, Will Johnson, cornerback from Michigan. This is a guy who was injured a lot from this past year, but before that was like first team All American both years, I believe. Like freshman breakout was a big reason why the defense won a national championship for Michigan. Um, I believe he has like I forget what I think he has like the record for the most pick sixes in college, like over the last 3 years or whatever.
Right.
Um, I think he is going to be awesome. I think he has been like I have if you ask my group chat of like people I text about what I want the Vikings to do, not even before this season started, right? Like
Right.
going before the college football season started, I can find you a text that says I expect the Vikings to have a top 5 pick. This is before Sam Darnold decided to turn into freaking, you know, Dan Marino. But um, I have a text that says I think the Vikings are going to be like a 5-12 team, pick like 5th overall, and I just want them to take Will Johnson. That is the guy who I want. I was like, I want that person on my team if we're gonna suck. And we didn't suck, so we're not gonna get Will Johnson. But if we did suck, he is going to be an elite corner in the league. I am like 10,000% confident. I think people are overthinking that he was injured and like that this year wasn't good because Michigan had a down year because lo and behold, you won a national championship and a bunch of guys went to the NFL. Like, what do you think's
Yeah.
going to happen?
So
So,
yeah.
I would say that Will Johnson. I didn't find his player page, but that's okay. I think Will Johnson's ceiling, like, is probably 6 to the Raiders because they just don't have like any corners at all.
My ceiling for him was actually Carolina at 8 to just
Okay.
pair up with JC Horn. Another thing, like if we're gonna be really good at something, let's just like be really good at corner.
Yep. I would say his floor though. I mean, I know the injuries scare people, but like he should not get past like San Francisco at 11.
That's where I have Panthers, San Francisco, only two teams I have written down. That's like where I see him going between.
I think San Fran is probably the fit that I like the most because he goes into, like Robert Saleh comes back, Travarius Ward leaves San Francisco, insert Will Johnson as the CB1 in Robert Saleh's defense.
Hmm.
And I think that just works because he could just do all the sauce stuff and more, probably.
Right.
And I just think I think that's just, hand in glove.
Correct.
Question is, does he get to 11? Like, I could see Carroll. I could really see any of that 6, 7, 8. Like, I could see any of those three teams taking him, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Hmm.
Um, we can move on to, I think we have four more players. We can move on to a position that you probably are a little more interested in, tight end. We have two tight ends. Tyler
Hmm.
Warren, first one, Penn State. Monster, just athlete, great head of hair. I don't know if you care
Yeah.
much about that, but a
Well,
lot of people have been making like player comps to Jeremy Shockey. I honestly kind of feel some of that is strictly based on the hair. But aside from that, older prospect. I don't know that that matters much in today's NFL, but like converted quarterback ends up playing tight end. They kind of used him all over the place, like Taysom Hill. But if Taysom Hill were like a really elite tight end, um, I would say that like the range for goodness Tyler Warren. I don't know why I just forgot his name. I think it probably starts at 7
hmm
because I don't not like sure. I guess you could like run two tight ends if you're the Raiders, but that's probably not happening. But
Yeah,
like
probably not.
the Jets, they need some kind of other pass catcher ultimately at some point in this draft. And if you take tight end, that's something like like when's the last good Jets tight end you can remember? Like really good Jets tight end. It's been a long time since they've had one.
Have they ever had one? I
I
think they've
mean,
had to have
like
had one since I've been alive.
Kellen Winslow, I guess,
Yeah,
Junior,
maybe.
which is I mean he's like canceled now, but for some gross stuff. But um, I mean I don't even know that like I can name one. So for them to have a good
Mm,
tight end would be really weird to
I've
me.
never heard of any of these guys except for Kellen Winslow's the second. I
It's like
mean,
because I remember there was like Chris Herndon, there was like Austin Safarian Jenkins. There's like some random names in there. Tyler Conklin now, right?
yeah, I mean it's just they're all nobodies. They're all I don't know who any of these guys are. But I'm looking at the whole list. I'm like I haven't heard of a single one of these guys besides I mean, Dustin Keller, Chris Baker, Ryan Griffin, Jeff Cumberland, Rich Castor, Anthony Becht, Mickey Schuler, Jerome Barkham, Johnny Mitchell, Kyle Brady, Pete Lamons, Fred Baxter, Thurlow Cooper, Kellen Winslow II, D. Mackey, Brandon Bostick. Oh, I know. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Doug Charlie, Gene Heater, Kellen Davis, Sean Ryan, Mark Boyer, James Dearth, Matthew
How many
Mulligan,
years?
Katie
Wait.
Dunn,
What
Eric
span of
Green, Glenn
time? What
Dennison,
span of
James
time is
Horton.
this over?
I don't know all time. I looked up all time Jets tight ends. I don't know a single one
I love how you just read off every tight end
to ever
who's
play for the
played for the
Jets,
Jets.
and we don't know any of them. All right. So, anyways, all right. So I have I have the Jets as a spot for me. Um, another. This sounds like super crazy. This is like really high up there. Like if the team just wants to reach
Uh huh.
that doesn't have a good tight end is Jacksonville.
Jacksonville's another one that like people have mentioned that wouldn't be crazy because you just superpower the offense with like BTJ, I guess what De'Ami Brown now, and then
Right.
Tyler Warren,
Now there's a team that can reset the clock
Gabe Davis, I guess. But
with him as well. The 49ers. If he slips to 11, the 49ers, I mean, George Kittle has been a really good piece for them. Like his time's fizzling out. He's kind of entering that Travis Kelsey, where Travis Kelsey kind of is now part of his career, where they could totally reset the clock and put that right back into the offense that they've just already had for so long and not skip a beat. Because Tyler Warren is good enough to just go ahead and not necessarily take that spot of George Kittle, but I think he's as good as George Kittle is at this point in his career now.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think that that's not a terrible idea to have that succession plan in place for, especially considering how important Kittle is to what they do offensively. Like you kind of need that type of pass catching threat at that position
I
to
mean, the
make it
years
work.
they've made it to the Super Bowl, he was very crucial.
Yeah. So I think, and that's definitely the floor. Like I think at this point, like I think
Hmm.
a lot of people, maybe the Colts at 14 are the floor because like the Colts also need a tight end. But I also think that Warren's hype at this point has gotten so much that he's probably going to go in the top 10. We can talk about the other tight end, which I'm going to say this. I'm going to change my rankings on the big board for the Box Score Network rankings and not be a coward anymore. Because I think Colson Loveland is a better tight end, or is going to be a better tight end than Tyler Warren is.
Hmm.
I'm tired of being a coward and hiding behind my little keyboard and my little Google sheet. Um, I'm gonna update my rankings and swap them. And I think Colson Loveland is just a he's not going to block very well, but he's just going to be a super powered Evan Ingram.
Yeah, that's why I have him going to Cincinnati.
Dude, if
Because
the
Cincinnati, I
problem is
think, is just fully.
they just
I,
paid Mike Gesicki though. That's the
yeah, they paid
problem.
Mike Gesicki, but at the same time, it's like, dude, this guy's gonna be twice as good as Mike Gesicki. And
So
like this,
you just say they run two wide receivers, two tight ends, and call it a
bro,
day.
dude, this team is fully committed to saying we are not going to have a defense, but we're going to score 50 points a game. They have fully committed to that. And that being said, yeah, dude, take this guy off the board. If you think he's going to be better than Tyler Warren, he's still there at 17. Oh my gosh, go get your tight end.
Honestly, for the like, not even for the memes, but just for like the general idea that the Bengals are just going to embrace being half of a team. Like I'm cool with it.
And it's and that's if it's not there. Another place I like a man is it's really if he falls, like he's have to slip pretty far. But the Rams, I think the Rams would be not a
Ooh,
bad
oh
fit
my
for a new
god,
tight end.
that would be.
Tyler Higbee's just like he's injured half the time. He's really good when he plays, I think. Just kind of underrated. I think it's time they get like a good target there at tight end.
I know I like picked the Chargers for Ibuka, but for the same reason, I think Loveland would be really good and the
Mhm.
Chargers. And I mean, like that's an obvious fit that people have made because of Harbaugh. You know, Loveland was his guy at Michigan, um, the first two seasons, and I think that gives them something like they don't have in their pass catching options, just like Ibuka would. There's not really like a bad fit per se.
Really, yeah, I agree.
Um, because whatever team he goes to is in need of a pass catcher, more than likely. Like, okay, I will say, like, if he were for he would never do this, but like for the same reason, I don't really love Tyler Warren to New Orleans. Like, yeah, they need a pass catcher, but I think they need like somebody on the defensive side a little bit more early on. I wouldn't love if like either of these guys went to New Orleans at number 9. That would be a little bit of a waste of that particular player at that position at that point in time, I guess.
Right.
Um,
Well,
I don't have another good fit. Is there any other fit you want to talk about?
no, that's all I got. But I will say this: you're about to like lose me here a little bit on these last like player or two.
Well, these are basically
So
basically
what I'm
it's
gonna do is I'm gonna like realistically like what I'm gonna let you do. I kind of want to let you just sound off on these two names and
I'm well,
say what you want to happen.
here's the thing, Parker. I'm not the offensive line expert. I just feel like we have to give the respect to the three best offensive line in this class, which is Will Campbell from LSU, Kelvin Banks Jr. from Texas, your Texas Longhorns, and Armand Membu, who's from Mizzou, who's been like the athletic freak left tackle who a team is going to take, and probably it's like, you remember Ike Ekwonu?
No.
Okay, never mind. He's the current Panthers left tackle who was like an athletic freak that tested crazy and like became a top 10 pick because of it. Point is that's Membu. It's just like kind of copy paste the same narrative where he's just like huge athlete gonna be a left tackle because of that. But all I'm gonna say is like who we'll frame it this way because I do want you to be part of the discussion because I'm not gonna go into these players, but like who do you think are the three teams that in that top? Because I'll say for two of the guys, for Membu and Will Campbell, like they're not getting out of the top 10, it doesn't look like. Okay.
Okay.
Banks probably is not getting past 20.
Okay.
Okay. So which two teams in the top 10 do you think have to come out of this draft with a like elite offensive lineman prospect?
Which two teams have to come out of the draft with
Yeah,
this?
yeah, like just like just first instinct when like whenever you think about it, because for example, for me, like I will say I think the Patriots should either draft Will Campbell or Membu, just
Okay.
beef up the offensive line for Drake May, right?
Hmm.
And then I would probably say the Jets.
Okay. All
That's
right.
probably where I would
I
go.
think Chicago is an option for me. And then if any of them happen to slip to Cincinnati, I don't hate Cincinnati taking an offensive
So
lineman
maybe like
either.
Banks, like if
Right.
Kelvin Banks
Yeah,
maybe because
Kelvin
that's
Banks would be
that's
the
that's the range that he would probably go in.
well
So
for
Banks,
Kelvin Banks, I will say I wrote down Cincinnati. If he's not going to slip past 20, I mean I wrote down Houston. Houston's
Houston, if he makes it to
well they got
25,
rid
that's
of
a
well they
home
got
run,
rid of Laramie Tunzel, and it's just like
right?
they have this gap there to me. So
Houston is like
um
the team that everybody says basically they just need to take offensive line in the first round no matter what.
mhm.
So that is really it for us. I think
That's
we did a
it.
pretty good job of going through all the top names in the draft, and I don't think that we missed. I mean, we could have talked about a couple other guys, but like honestly, I think we did a good job
Not needed.
doing high level talking about the most important guys, the main characters of the draft, so to speak, right?
Right.
And rest of the week, you guys will have plenty of Box Score Network content. If you really want to dive into some of the other names in this class, we're going to have plenty of content for that on the YouTube channel. But otherwise, this is the end of the episode. Thank you for joining us for our draft content, our so called draft preview. We are going to recap the draft on our pod next week, talk about, maybe classes, maybe some like surprises. It'll be after all three rounds have happened. So we won't give you any like instant reactions to the
All
first round.
7 rounds.
Yeah, but we'll give you some ideas of like draft, moves we did or didn't like that maybe made sense, maybe not. Um, Whenever we come back next week, including, we're gonna have some NBA games happen between now and then, maybe some series that end up getting some kind of finalized idea of what's gonna happen, and we'll talk about that. Other than that, though, we can go ahead and get out of here. Parker, do you have anything to tell them?
Yeah, good luck to all of your NBA teams. Good luck to all of your teams that are going into the draft this week. Really excited, really fun time for NFL fans now that we've been out of football for a couple of months. Other than that, yeah, excited to talk to you guys next week. Let's get out of here.
All right, sounds good. Talk to you guys later.